I got pushed into a freezing pool in front of 400 guests. My crime: one drop of wine landed on a designer dress that probably cost more than my rent for a year, but I'm not just a waitress. And the man who stood up from his seat, walked straight toward the water with fire in his eyes, was about to end his engagement right there in front of everyone. If you've ever been judged before anyone bothered to know your story, stay with me till the end, because what happens next is going to give you chills. Hit follow now because you don't want to miss how this one ends. My name is Aurora, and 3 months ago, I was folding napkins in a hotel kitchen, trying to remember the last time I felt like a real person instead of someone people looked through. I used to have a different life, a comfortable one, but things fell apart fast after my father got sick and the bills ate everything we had saved. I dropped out of my final year of business school and picked up shifts wherever I could. Eventually, I landed a job at one of the most expensive hotels in the city, working events for people whose monthly grocery bill was more than what I made in 6 months. That night, the hotel was hosting the biggest event of the year, an engagement party, 400 guests, crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers flown in from 3 different countries, a live orchestra setting up near the garden, and a pool area lit up like something from a movie. The man at the center of it all was a billionaire, young, sharp, the kind of person who built an empire from nothing and never smiled for cameras unless he had a reason to. People whispered about him in the staff room like he was a myth. Some said he was cold. Some said he was just tired of people wanting things from him. His fiancée was a different story entirely. She arrived 2 hours before the event in a dress the color of soft blush, dripping in jewelry, surrounded by an entourage that adjusted her hair every few minutes like she was made of glass. She didn't speak to staff. She looked through us the same way most of these guests did. I remember thinking, this is just one night. Get through it, collect the pay, go home, check on your father, repeat. I had no idea how wrong that thought was. As I carried trays through the crowd, I caught pieces of conversations, people talking about stock prices, vacation homes, and weddings that cost more than entire neighborhoods. I kept my head down, my tray steady, my smile polite but distant. That's the rule when you work events like this. You're invisible until someone needs something. At one point, I was refilling water glasses near the head table when the fiancée snapped her fingers at me without even looking up. This water isn't cold enough. I apologized, replaced the glass, and walked away. Small things like that happened all night. A complaint about the temperature of the soup. A complaint about how the waiter, meaning me, was standing too close. A complaint about literally everything. I told myself it didn't matter. In a few hours, I'd clock out, take my pay, and never see any of these people again. But there was one moment early in the night that stuck with me. I was setting a tray down near the garden entrance when the billionaire walked past. He wasn't paying attention to me. He was talking to one of his business partners, but for half a second, his eyes met mine. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a flicker of recognition, like he was trying to place where he'd seen my face before. Then he kept walking, and I told myself I imagined it. I had no idea that flicker would change everything. By 10 o'clock, the party was in full swing. Music drifted from the live band, laughter echoed across the lawn, and the pool area glowed under string lights. Guests had drinks in hand, dancing near the water, completely unaware that the night was about to take a sharp turn. I was assigned to the drink station near the pool, balancing a tray of champagne glasses through a crowd that kept shifting and laughing and bumping into each other. It was chaos in the best and worst way, beautiful chaos if you weren't the one trying not to spill anything. That's when it happened. A guest, clearly a few drinks deep, stumbled backward into me without warning. My tray tilted, and one single glass of red wine slipped off the edge, landing directly on the fiancée's dress. It happened so fast I barely processed it before she spun around, her face twisted in pure fury. "Are you serious right now?" I immediately apologized, reaching for a napkin, explaining it wasn't intentional, that a guest had bumped into me, but she wasn't listening. She was staring at the stains spreading across the fabric like I had personally set her dress on fire. "This dress cost more than you'll make in your entire life," she snapped, loud enough that nearby guests turned to look. I kept apologizing, kept trying to fix it, kept my voice calm even though my hands were shaking. I've learned that in this job, you absorb people's anger because complaining back gets you fired. But she wasn't finished. "You people are all the same, careless, useless, you don't belong anywhere near guests like us." The crowd around us had grown. Some people pulled out their phones, sensing drama. Others whispered to each other, enjoying the spectacle from a safe distance. I felt my face burn with humiliation, but I stood there and took it because that's what the job required. Then she did something I never expected. She grabbed my arm hard and shoved me backward. I lost my balance immediately, my tray flying out of my hands, glasses shattering somewhere behind me as my body hit the cold water of the pool. The shock of it stole the air from my lungs. For a second, everything went silent underwater, the muffled sound of music and laughter pressing against my ears as I sank for half a heartbeat before kicking back up to the surface. When I broke through the water, gasping, soaked, humiliated beyond words, the entire party had gone quiet. 400 guests frozen. Some people laughed, a few gasped. Most just stared, phones raised, capturing the moment like it was entertainment instead of someone's worst night. I stayed in the water for a few seconds, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. My uniform clung to me, my hair plastered to my face, and somewhere in that humiliation, I caught sight of her standing at the edge of the pool, arms crossed, looking down at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Maybe now you'll learn to be more careful," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's when I heard footsteps moving fast across the patio stones. I didn't expect anyone to come help me. In moments like this, staff usually fend for themselves while guests watch like it's a show. But the footsteps kept coming closer, and when I looked up, it was him, the billionaire, jacket already half off his shoulders, expression unreadable but intense, moving straight toward the pool without hesitation. He didn't call for staff, he didn't ask someone else to handle it. He knelt at the edge, reached down, and pulled me out himself, his hands steady despite the chaos around us. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, confused because in their world a man like him didn't do things like that, not for someone like me. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly, his voice cutting through the noise like it was just the two of us standing there. I shook my head, too stunned to speak, water dripping from my uniform onto the marble tiles. That's when his fiancée's voice cut through the silence, sharp and impatient. "She ruined my dress, I had every right to." He turned to face her, and something in his expression shifted instantly, not anger exactly, something colder, something that looked like disappointment hardening into resolve. "You pushed her into a pool," he said, his voice low but carrying across the silent crowd, "because of a dress." She opened her mouth to respond, but he wasn't finished. "In front of 400 people, you put your hands on someone who works for me, who works at this event, who did absolutely nothing wrong because a glass of wine spilled by accident." The guests had gone completely still now, sensing that the real story of the night wasn't the engagement. It was unfolding right in front of them. I stood there, soaked and shivering, watching the man everyone whispered about defend me without hesitation, without caring how it looked, without worrying about the headlines this might create. And then, something even stranger happened. He looked at me again, longer this time, studying my face like he was solving a puzzle he'd been carrying around for years. "Aurora," he said quietly. My breath caught. He remembered my name, not because he'd read it off a name tag, he remembered it from somewhere else entirely. Years ago, before any of this, before the empire and the parties and the version of him the world knew now, he was just a young man trying to get his first business idea off the ground. No investors believed in him, no banks would take the risk. Except one person did. My father. My father ran a small but respected financial consulting firm at the time, long before his illness took everything from us. He took a chance on a nervous, ambitious young entrepreneur with nothing but an idea and a notebook full of numbers. My father mentored him for almost 2 years, refusing payment more than once, believing in him when no one else did. I remembered him faintly from childhood, a young man who used to sit at our kitchen table with my father, sketching business plans on napkins while I did homework nearby. I was maybe 12 at the time. I never imagined our paths would cross again, especially not like this. When my father's health declined and the business eventually folded under medical debt, we lost contact with almost everyone from that part of our lives. I never reached out to him because pride kept me silent, and honestly, I assumed someone like him wouldn't remember an awkward kid from his early struggling years. But he did remember, he remembered everything. Standing there at the edge of that pool, recognition fully settling into his expression, he turned back to the crowd, his voice steady and firm. "This woman's father gave me my start when no one else would. He believed in me before I had anything to offer in return. And tonight, in my own home, in front of people I invited to celebrate something I thought meant commitment and respect, my fiancé humiliated her and assaulted her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones that had been recording for entertainment now captured something far more serious. His fiancée's face went pale, then flushed with anger and panic. "You're embarrassing me in front of everyone over a waitress." "No," he said, calm but unshakable. "You embarrassed yourself the moment you decided cruelty was acceptable as long as no one important was watching." That's when other voices started speaking up. A few staff members, nervous but emboldened, mentioned other incidents. How she'd belittled hotel employees during planning meetings, how she'd once gotten a server fired over a delayed dessert course, how she treated everyone beneath her like furniture instead of people. The mask she'd worn so carefully for months, maybe years, was cracking in real time in front of everyone she'd ever tried to impress. He stepped further into the crowd, raising his voice just enough for the entire garden to hear him clearly. "I built everything I have believing that character matters more than appearances. That kindness costs nothing but says everything about who you really are. Tonight, I watched the woman I was about to marry prove she doesn't understand that at all." His fiancée tried one last attempt at damage control, her voice shifting into something softer, more pleading. "I made a mistake. I was upset. We can talk about this privately. This isn't the place." "This is exactly the place," he interrupted. "You made your point in front of 400 people. I'm allowed to make mine in the same place." He reached into his jacket, pulled off the engagement ring's matching wedding band he'd been wearing as a symbol of their commitment for the public eye, and set it down on the table beside them. "The engagement is over." The words landed like thunder across the silent garden. Even the orchestra had stopped playing, the musicians frozen mid-note, sensing the moment required nothing but raw silence. Security approached quietly, not dragging her out dramatically, but offering to escort her to gather her things and leave with whatever dignity remained. She looked around at the crowd, searching for anyone to defend her, but the guests who had laughed minutes earlier now looked away, uncomfortable, unwilling to associate themselves with what had just been exposed. She left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the stone path until the sound faded into the night. The party didn't fully recover its festive energy after that, but slowly, conversations resumed in hushed, careful tones. Staff quietly began cleaning up broken glass near the pool while I stood wrapped in a blanket someone had brought from inside, still processing everything that had just unfolded. He found me near the garden entrance a little while later, 2 cups of warm tea in hand, offering me one without a word. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for tonight, for not recognizing you sooner, for everything you've had to go through while I was busy building a life that apparently made me blind to people who actually matter." I didn't know what to say. Weeks of exhaustion, financial stress, and quiet humiliation finally caught up with me, and for the first time that night, my eyes filled with tears I'd been holding back. "My father always said you'd do something great," I told him. "He just never imagined I'd see it firsthand like this." He smiled, small but genuine, the first real smile I'd seen from him all night. "Your father believed in me when I had nothing to show for myself. The least I can do is make sure his daughter is never treated like nothing again." He offered me a position, not out of pity, but as someone who genuinely wanted to help rebuild what circumstances had taken from my family. A real opportunity. A chance to finish my education, to use the skills I'd learned, to step into a life that matched the potential my father always saw in me. I didn't accept immediately. I needed time to process everything, to separate gratitude from emotion, to make sure any decision I made was for the right reasons. But in the weeks that followed, something shifted. Not a fairy tale romance overnight, nothing rushed or unrealistic. Just 2 people who'd crossed paths because of an unexpected night by a pool, slowly rebuilding a connection rooted in respect rather than spectacle. Looking back now, I think about how easily that night could have gone differently. How many times people in positions of power choose silence over standing up for what's right, simply because speaking up is inconvenient. But sometimes, the people who seem the most untouchable are the ones who remember exactly where they came from, and exactly who helped them get there. I learned that dignity isn't about how much money is in your bank account or what brand of dress you're wearing. It's about how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. That night I lost a job, gained an unexpected ally, and watched karma move faster than I ever thought possible. If this story moved you, even a little, drop a comment below and let me know what part hit you the hardest. Follow this channel for more stories just like this one, stories about resilience, dignity, and the quiet ways karma finds its way back around. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that being kind costs nothing, but cruelty always finds its way home. I'll see you in the next story.